Hello, my Boss Babes fanatics, and a big what's up to the High Point Rockers baseball fans. February is upon us. We are 1 month into the new year. I can't believe how incredibly fast it has come and gone, just like a gust of wind. And you are now on air with Brittany Baldi. So I thank you all for tuning in yet again to a brand new episode. I hope you enjoyed my 4 podcast episodes last month. I received lots of great feedback, and I personally enjoy reading your DMs on my @Brittany Baldi social media platforms. This month, I will be dropping 4 brand new podcast episodes for you all. A 2-part podcast special will feature fellow Lost Mom, my friend Tiffany Paltauf, as well as a Boss Babes Vault episode featuring former MTV personality turned travel extraordinaire and free diver Jamie Larson. I want to caution everyone that listens to each and every one of my episodes that, of course, I am not a doctor, a health specialist, or a therapist. Each episode that I put out is a mix of my own opinions and facts that I pull from reading and other resources. If you need any type of assistance or help, medical or other, of course, please seek it out professionally. I myself have currently been going to grief therapy for the last 4 months. Also, please bear in mind that this is a lifestyle sports podcast. This very podcast has been around since the year 2019. The podcast is a culmination of my sports personality career, life with my husband, and a variety of great solo episodes focusing on multiple topics such as vacations that we take, my pregnancy, sadly, currently my stillbirth, and much more. Bear in mind, I do enjoy dropping thought-provoking interviews with professional athletes, entrepreneurs, reality TV personalities, and special guests like I have on today. I guess what I'm trying to get at is this podcast is not just solely going to focus on child loss or my stillbirth, and I will continue putting out an array of content and, of course, sprinkling in my grief journey. If you enjoy my content, please hit the follow button on this very podcast. Each episode is free to listen to, and if you enjoy this content, share it out with your friends and family. I would love that, and who knows, my content may just be what they need to help them through a tough day. I enjoy this lovely community that we are all creating. So thank you all once again for tuning in. Please give me a great review on the app as well. Positive reviews allow me to continue creating and sharing with you all. Let's leap year into this week's brand new episode. First off, I had no idea that this was even a leap year. I was sitting there writing up my calendar both in my phone and in our kitchen, and my husband kind of playfully came up behind me and said, "Britt, you know you need to add one more day to February. There's 29 days. It's a leap year." And I just jokingly laughed it off, and I was like, okay, how confusing. Okay, 29 days in February. Here we go. But this episode is going to focus mainly on stillbirth, pregnancy after loss, and wanting to conceive after loss. These are the topics that will be discussed in this 2-part podcast special. I have been focusing a decent amount of my social media and podcast content on these topics because sadly, that is the season that I'm currently in. And once again, my podcast is simply just an audible journal, and I enjoy opening up to my lovely community about all things my life without getting too personal, of course. But I am currently entering month 5 of being a lost mom. Just exactly what does that mean? It means 5 months of my body and arms yearning to hold a living, breathing baby. It means waking up each day and looking at photos of my son sleeping, wondering, why is he not here on earth? It means crying each and every week as I slowly slip out of the shock of losing him and now thinking to myself, wow, he really is actually gone. And yes, his physical body sadly will never be back. But what do we do about this now? It means 5 months of so many emotions that it's hard to put into words exactly what I am feeling and thinking most days. And to help me discuss all of these emotions and much more, joining me is Tiffany Paltauf. So Tiffany, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Brittany. I really appreciate you having me back on the podcast.
So Tiffany, a few months back, joined me me right here as she described her lost mom journey. Sadly, she too, while in labor, lost her stunning daughter, Bella, right around the same time that Ryan and I lost our son, Jordan. If you have not done so already, please feel free to listen to those 2 parts of her podcast special to better understand her journey. But in the meantime, I will have her lightly fill you all in on what it's been like being a lost mom and what were those emotions she went through during her loss.
Yeah, so I lost my daughter Bella during labor on September 28th, 2023. So I as well am going into month 5 of her loss, and it's been really hard. I pictured my life very differently at this point. My daughter would be 5 months old now, and unfortunately, she's in heaven. So it's been really, really hard, but I'm so grateful that I have so many lost moms that I've connected with, especially you, Brittany, and it makes me feel so much less alone and less isolated going through this really, really hard process.
I do want to talk about our friendship because you hit a perfect nail on the head by kind of starting to explain how important it is to have a soul tribe, to have friends, even if they're complete strangers at the beginning. You kind of develop that friendship and that relationship because you relate on a level that most people will never relate to you. So it is important having people that you can have to constantly check in on you. First off, I am very grateful for us connecting, and I will lightly mention how you and I connected. Right after my loss about 4 or 5 months ago, I started scrambling for resources. I felt super alone. I was wondering why this happened to me. What are the statistics? Searching for any answers that I could. And with that being said, I started looking on social media at certain hashtags like stillborn, stillbirth, and I came across a lot of Tiffany's posts, and I followed her. I kind of slid in her DMs, and I immediately wanted to start a friendship with her and get her on this podcast because I thought that it would be healing for the both of us, but also healing for others that are going through similar situations. Our friendship has turned into much more than her just being on this podcast. Every single day, she will text me or I will text her just to check in to see how she is feeling, how she is doing, what she is up to, what are her emotions. And I will have Tiffany describe what our friendship is like, and also the idea behind the fact that we are heading into month 5 and people start to kind of fall off the face of the planet and live their own lives, which totally understandable, right? I get it. We have all been there, done that. Somebody experiences a loss and you're just like, okay, they're left to deal with it on their own. So you stop getting those phone calls, you stop getting the text messages, you're no longer receiving the sympathy cards in the mail, you're not getting the food and the flowers and all of the things. So who do you have to turn to other than your friends that understand what's going on? So Tiffany, let's talk about the impact of great friendships.
You kind of just really said it all. I feel like after 3 months, text started to kind of slow down and people go on with their lives, which like you said, I don't expect people to continuously check in on me. I understand that the world continues to go on, even though we are stuck in this horrific grief and loss. The only way that I've been able to really keep going is by connecting with you and other lost moms because they still feel the grief. I've talked to people online who lost their baby years ago and they're still in this heavy mourning stage, and you feel so much less alone. We have the best conversations together, Brittany. We'll voice memo each other. We're like, is this normal to feel like this? Did you feel like this? How are you doing? You're the only one that really understands, along with other lost moms, other people that have not gone through this specifically. They really don't understand, and I don't expect them to understand. So just having this community of other lost moms and lost parents, it really helps me, and I'm sure it helps you just keep on going, knowing that you know what, there is a community out there that, we're not alone in this and we can get through this together. And I feel like it's just so important and it's been so helpful for me.
It is very impactful to have a tribe behind you and a support beam of individuals that can relate to you on a level that not even your husband or partner can. And Tiffany and I were discussing this before we even started recording, where yes, our husbands are absolutely fantastic. They are there for us when we need to cry on their shoulder. They'll give us the hug. They'll bring us coffee in bed or whatever the case may be. I am not undermining our partners by any stretch. They are fantastic people, and I would not be surviving this if I did not have a good partner. So I will be open about that. I feel for the women or the individuals that are experiencing this alone, because I do know there are sadly people that experiencing loss and grief on a number of levels alone. And And we do encourage you to get out there and get a tribe and have people help you through it, because it is not easy. But I guess what I'm getting at is your husband or even your best friend don't know what it's like getting your period month after month and looking down at that blood and knowing that it's reminding you of your loss, or getting a cramp and being like, oh crap, takes you right back like PTSD to the point of getting induced or going into labor and knowing that your baby is already passed away and you're going to have to see them sleeping. Being able to talk to somebody like Tiffany and get into those deep conversations that are not easy to talk about makes those topics a little easier to talk about, because she understands fully what I'm going through. I do want to discuss the realities of heading into month 5, because we both are, of not having our baby's hair earthside. I want my listeners to kind of like gauge from the both of us, what does that feel like? What does our day-to-day look like each day? And I know for people that are tuning in, your day-to-day and your thoughts and emotions are different, and I understand that, but that way you can kind of hear from us what we are experiencing. So Tiff, what exactly are you feeling on the daily, and how do you cope with those intrusive thoughts and emotions?
Yeah, so I think, every day is kind of different. I've had a couple menstrual cycles, obviously, since my loss, and I feel like the beginning of each menstrual cycle is super triggering for me and just puts me in like a really down mood and super triggering. It's strange because I feel like sometimes I'm like, I should still be pregnant because I don't have a living baby here. It just feels super confusing. And so, like, when I get my menstrual cycle, I'm just in shock. It's almost like you are just reminded that you don't have a living baby, you're not pregnant. It's really, really hard. And I feel like those times of the month are like the hardest for me. Also, your hormones are just crazy. You're already just like a little bit agitated. So those times are really hard for me. I do run a nonprofit animal sanctuary. So my life revolves around caring for over 60 plus rescued farmed animals. And I always say this online, like, they have rescued me every single day. If I didn't have these animals, I truly don't know how I would keep on going, because they're healthy distraction, honestly, like the healthy distraction that I need. These animals depend on me when I'm supposed to have my living child depend on me. So I've just poured like a lot of my energy and a lot of my emotions into the animals, and it's been super healing for me.
I can 100% agree with you with getting the menstrual cycle each month, having it be very triggering. And I know that you and I will talk more about this later on in part 2 of this podcast special, but I will lightly touch upon it right here, where for me, every time I get my menstrual cycle, it's a weird dichotomy of, yes, I'm excited that I'm getting my period in a way, because that signifies fertility coming back, right? And when your period is on a regular cycle, it signifies that your body is healing and that you are getting ready to hopefully be able to conceive and that you are healing. So in that respect, it's a good thing that you are on a regular cycle and menstruating each month. And I know Tiffany and I talk about that every time we are getting ready to get our period. We have to remind each other of, okay, we might not have conceived yet, or we might not be thinking of conceiving yet, but we are on a regular cycle to some extent, and that is a good thing. But on the flip side, Tiffany just lightly spoke about it, where every time you get your menstrual cycle, it's that reality of, damn, I don't have my baby here. So what am I supposed to do? And me looking at this blood is a reminder of when I gave birth to my baby and the recovery of not having my baby. I don't even know how to explain it. A weird headspace, a triggering headspace, but also a healing headspace, because you have to look at it from both sides of the sword, right? Both edges of the sword here, where yes, getting your menstrual cycle is great because it means you can conceive potentially, but then also looking at their blood, you're like, this is triggering. So I know a lot of women listening to this, especially if you are tuning in for the sole purpose of learning a little bit more about pregnancy loss, or you yourself might have gone through pregnancy loss. I know you understand exactly what we're talking about. And I love that you explained how your animals are a great healthy coping mechanism for you. My thoughts on the topic, as I just mentioned, are simply that I am going through the exact same thought process that Tiffany is currently, and it is triggering, it is challenging, it is traumatic just about every week. And I am grateful for people like her, my husband, my dog, my family, and my friends. Any suggestions, Tiffany, for those that are currently going through a similar loss or any other form of grief to help cope with something like we are?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say share your story if that's comfortable for you. I've started sharing my story on Instagram and TikTok. And on TikTok, a couple of lost moms are like, I don't know how you share these stories. Like, I really want to, but I'm scared. And like, I always tell them, I'm like, just do what feels right. If you're uncomfortable, obviously don't do it. But sharing your story adds to building a community and it builds support. Getting your story out there can potentially help other people. I know that I've helped so many women, and so have you, by sharing my story, even though sometimes it's really hard. I also read something somewhere, the more you reshare your story, it actually helps your grieving process because your brain is starting to actually understand what happened because you're repeating the story so many times. And I feel it too. Like, I can now talk about Bella and share her story without totally breaking down and feeling super uncomfortable because I've shared it so many times. It's just made things a lot smoother on my end to really grasp and understand what has happened. So I think that if you are able to share your story, just start sharing it. You know, you don't have to go into complete detail, sharing your daughter or son's name or sharing the things that you do to honor them and little things like that. It's super helpful because it makes other people feel less alone. And in return, you just start to feel a little bit better.
I 100% can agree with that in the sense that being able to share your story in any way, shape, or form is comforting. And I know that's comforting for you and I, and you lightly just mentioned if you're not comfortable sharing your story publicly, you could simply just get a journal. Go out, buy yourself a journal or grab a spare piece of paper or a notebook. If you aren't comfortable sharing your story online or through a podcast like we are, it is okay. Not everybody is the same. Obviously, Tiffany and I are more vocal about it, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's also nothing wrong with not wanting to publicly share your loss. And I understand that, and I know that Tiffany understands that, but even just simply writing down your thoughts and emotions and like journaling about what you're going through and getting your story and your feelings out of your head and like releasing that onto a piece of paper, I feel would be very beneficial. Or even going to talk to a therapist, somebody that is unbiased, that doesn't know you personally, that when you walk out that door will not share your story, does not know who you are. And it is beneficial, in my opinion and Tiffany's opinion, to discuss and get your thoughts and emotions out, because you holding them in and just having that turntable of thoughts over and over and over again, honestly, guys, is not healthy. Do research on your nerves and your nervous system, what stress does to the body and what trauma and not releasing trauma, how it affects your brain and your emotions, and having a foggy mindset and forgetting things, causing things like heart attacks. And I can go on and on and on. Things like hair loss and maybe not being able to conceive in the future because your hormones and body is all out of whack. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm no specialist, but I obviously do my own research. And I encourage you to research topics like stress relief because I feel in the long run, it'll be very helpful. But I'm going to segue into discussing pregnancy after loss and the idea of wanting to conceive post-loss, because this is a topic that Tiffany and I talk about just about every day. We are wanting to conceive after loss, and there's lots of excitement with that, but also lots of nerve-wracking thoughts with that. Whether it be a stillbirth, miscarriage, or any other form of child loss, deciding when to try after a loss, again, if you so choose to try again, is a decision that takes much thinking about between both yourself and your partner. And of course, so many emotions are brought up. I want to first start off by stating that you are not alone when it comes to these tough decision-making thoughts. Once again, both Tiffany and I are going through it currently ourselves. There are many resources online within your community that can help assist you in your decision-making if you so choose to go that route. If you want to become pregnant post-loss, there are specific therapists and resources for you that can help with your emotions during your next pregnancy. I pulled this specific statistic offline, and I quote, "You can ovulate and become pregnant as soon as 2 weeks after a miscarriage. Once you feel emotionally and physically ready for pregnancy after a miscarriage, ask your healthcare provider for guidance. After one miscarriage, there might be no need to wait to conceive," end quote. So that is regarding a miscarriage. But in our case, Tiffany and I had stillbirths. Her baby was 100% full term. My baby was 32 weeks gestation. So when it comes to a stillbirth, it is advised to wait 3 months or more to let your body regulate and heal properly. And that is what my OB told me personally. So I'm going to ask Tiffany, what did your OB advise you as far as the weight game? How long were you supposed to wait in between? And I'm not just talking about the 6 to 8 week visit where they clear you and say, hey, it's okay for you to start being intimate and having sex again. I mean, when did they tell you it is safe for you to actually try to conceive?
I, delivered full term and I was in labor. So like my body thought that I just delivered a living child. So my body, and yours did too, like went through all the postpartum things. My doctor told me that they like to tell moms that had this happen, wait 12 to 18 months. And I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know about that. I want to have a living child one day. So he kind of knew that like, maybe we wouldn't wait that long or maybe we would. And he said that, let's get blood work done once you're done healing and once you feel a little better, obviously it's up to you. So curious too, like on the stats on how many women conceive 3 months or so after birth. I mean, obviously we're at 5 months now, so like almost halfway to a year, which is kind of crazy. I don't know. That's just what my OB said. So I'm interested to hear what your OB said because I feel like they want you to wait longer because they want your body to completely heal. Obviously, in some cases like ours, they're not shocked if we conceive sooner than that.
For the women that are tuning into this podcast episode, if you want to slide in my @Brittany Baldi DMs, I would be more than happy to hear from you what exactly your OBs told you about waiting. Did they say 3 months? Did they say you could start right away? Did they say 12 months to 18 months? My personal OB, as I mentioned, they said at least at the bare minimum, wait 3 months. And they said any length of time after that, of course, is better. But they said at the bare minimum, wait 3 months. And to that extent, I understand, right? Like your body just went through something very traumatic. Your hormones need to regulate. You're suffering this great loss mentally, physically, emotionally, all of the things. There is no right or wrong answer, right? Like for when you want to start trying to conceive, because there are some women that try right away and they get pregnant right away. And then there's people like Tiffany and I that are deciding, okay, when do we want to start trying to conceive? And the whole thought process behind being intimate with our partners again can be a little bit scary just thinking about that topic, right? Because the act of having sex with our partner at times can be triggering. And her and I will lightly talk about that later on in this podcast episode. Of course, not getting too personal, but I do want you guys to kind of hear from us what exactly we're going through. I do want to pull up this article. It's an article from Tommys.org. That's TOMMYS.org. The Tommys online support page has been very helpful to me during my own personal time of loss. They also have a support group of women on Facebook that share their experiences with loss, pregnancy after loss, and trying to conceive and much more. They have lots of free resources and articles, and again, women openly talking about their experiences. So go ahead and check them out online or on their Facebook page. I do want to read a little article that I found online from Tommys.org because I feel most of you that are tuning in will find this helpful. So bear with me as I pull this up and I'm going to read some of this article for you all. And then I'm going to get Tiffany's thoughts on this exact article. This article is titled Loss Support, Stillbirth Information, and Support After a Late Term Loss. This article states, being pregnant again after a stillbirth or late term loss often brings mixed emotions and can be very anxious at times. You can ask for extra care, monitoring, and reassurance in your next pregnancy. The experience of losing a baby can sometimes make it impossible for parents to think of pregnancy as a happy time that results in a healthy baby. Instead, it can become a very anxious time full of fear and worry. Most health professionals are aware of this and will be able to offer you extra care, monitoring, and reassurance in your next pregnancy. Being pregnant again after a loss can bring up lots of overwhelming emotions and can sometimes bring a new wave of grief. Remember that it's okay if you're not feeling okay and need some more support. Please speak to your healthcare team if you're feeling like this as a way to get support for yourself. Lots of parents have told us, and again, this is Tommy's, that it's important to remember that a rainbow baby or a baby after loss is not a replacement for their brother or sister who came before. And it can be helpful for some families to try to include them in this pregnancy and think of them as a big sister or brother. So without me having to read this full entire article, I know you guys kind of get the gist of it, that this article is basically trying to reassure you that there is going to be excitement and obviously emotions of fear and worry when it comes to your next pregnancy, if you so choose to get pregnant after having multiple miscarriages, one miscarriage, or in our case, suffering a stillbirth. So Tiff, after hearing that article, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like, God willing, if we're able to get pregnant again, I just know it's going to be such a different situation and experience, which really sucks because with my first pregnancy with Bella, I was so carefree. I had no fear. I had no worry. I was like the happiest pregnant girl ever, and I loved it. And I just know that like the next time that we do this, it's going to be really challenging, but it's also going to make me feel so guilty that I'm not able to be so carefree. It's going to be hard to enjoy it, which really sucks because like I don't want my Bella's future sibling to feel like I was miserable their whole pregnancy or so scared the whole time. So it's going to be a really hard thing to go through, which I think I wanted to mention earlier. Like, first thing that people said to me once I lost Bella was, and I quote, like, you can just have another one. And I'm sure you've heard that a million times. And I just wish people would understand that it's not that simple. Our next pregnancy is going to be extremely challenging. You know, I'm going to be high risk. I'm going to be all the things, so many extra testing and so many worries. Like you said, like you would never, replace, your son, or I would never replace my daughter Bella. So it's going to be really, really tough. It's going to be the hardest thing that I ever do, which is why talking about trying to conceive after loss is such a heavy topic. And it's not as simple as just getting pregnant and like being fine, because you will just be scared the whole time and it's going to be really tough.
And to your point of that whole anxiety mindset, I 100% relate with Tiffany on that. And some of you tuning in, again, your journeys and your situations might be similar or different than ours, and we understand that. But for us, it's almost as if like Tiffany and I are like some type of like a soul sister or split soul or something. And the reason why I say that is her and I are legitimately going through the exact same thing at the exact same time with very similar situations, in the sense that her and I both conceived very easily. We were enjoying our pregnancies. We didn't really have any crazy symptoms. We loved being pregnant. And at the beginning, we were kind of afraid of getting pregnant because we didn't know what to expect. But as the pregnancy continued, we thought to ourselves, like, wow, this is actually kind of fun and cool. I'm excited to possibly have multiple children with my husband and see how he is as a father. And then to all of a sudden get slammed in the face, no pun intended, losing our babies was like such a wave of emotions that it's hard for us to even explain, because going from so excited and so thrilled to become a parent after already being scared to conceive because you don't know what to expect, to then losing your child after accepting the fact that you are pregnant and you're enjoying this pregnancy, to now having to get into the mindset of wanting to conceive again and going through that whole process again and not knowing the unknown. As I sit here and I say this, it gives me the chills. And I know that like God and the universe has put Tiffany in this position because we do have platforms to talk about topics like this, because I know multiple women out there are having very similar situations and thoughts, or have gone through something similar. And it is difficult to talk about. It is difficult to go through. And I do want to throw out there that whenever I do conceive, I'm going to be very grateful and very excited, but also nervous. And I will say that whenever I do have a living, breathing baby or two, I will continue sharing my story, and I will continue talking about these topics and having my son be remembered and known. And I know Tiffany will do the same, because I truly believe one of our life missions now is to continue to talk about things such as child loss. And without going too much down that rabbit hole, because I know we could talk about this forever, I just want to, again, thank you all for tuning in to this very podcast. And Tiffany, I appreciate you sharing all of your thoughts. I know that this is not an easy topic to discuss, but Tiffany, any other comments you can give to us regarding that article that I just shared from Tommy's.org?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was like a perfect article to read because it kind of just like hits every point with child loss. And I think the main thing is, you're not alone. And if you are listening to this and you're like, wow, thank God, like I tuned in, like honestly, like share this with everyone. Like people need to know that they're not alone. And what we're going through can feel so isolating. And there are resources out there like Tommy's Place, and you really need to find them and use them because it's important.
Once again, first off, I want to thank each and every person that has shared their stories with me via social media, including Tiffany, of course. I appreciate all of you. It's helping me heal heal, and I know it's helping you all heal as well. And content like this very podcast as a collective is helping assist groups of people. And before Tiffany and I begin to share our own personal journeys with you all regarding wanting to conceive post-loss and all of the anxiety and excitement behind that thought process, I wanted to anonymously share a story from a lovely, brave woman that has been chatting with me about her journey with her loss and now current pregnancy via my Instagram. This woman gave me permission to share her story, and once again, I want to gently congratulate her on her current pregnancy post-loss. Again, I'm only going to share bits and pieces of it because I feel like it's a perfect way for both Tiffany and I to kind of discuss what she's going through and then segue into our own personal journey. This woman started off back in December. She slid in my DMs, lightly told me about her story of loss, and she was giving me her gratitude and sympathies for what I was currently going through. So I want to first off start off by thanking her for finding me online and being brave enough to not only thank me for sharing my story, but also making me feel like I wasn't alone. And it makes me sad and teary-eyed just saying that, but I'm truly grateful for all of the strangers that are now becoming friends, a journey that none of us ever want to go down, but if you're stuck in it, it's good to have people like this in your life. This woman said to me, "It's been a long road for this journey, and I really would like it to be shared. I had 2 miscarriages, no answers why. I went to see a specialist because I felt there was something wrong. I had a large fibroid and multiple fibroids were found, which equated to me and my uterus not getting the blood flow it needed that a baby would survive." So she had fibroid removal surgery and 8 fibroids came out. She went into changing her diet and exercising and working on a better, healthier life. And she, again, was hoping to conceive. This woman, again, a couple months ago, slid in my DMs, mentioned her loss, talked to me about her struggles, and was kind of helping reassure me that, again, I was not alone, to try to encourage me to conceive if and when I was ready to do so. So very recently, this woman, again, slid in my DMs and said, "Hi, Brittany. Not sure if you remember me, but we spoke back in December about my friend's grief journey from her 6-day-old son, as well as my 2 miscarriages. Just letting you know, today would have been the first day of my missed period. And for some reason, about an hour ago, I was like, what the heck? Let me just take a test. Well, I tested positive and I am freaking out, full of emotions. Happy went instantly to nervous, panic attack, and scared of the unknown, and if another miscarriage would happen. I needed to share this with someone, and after listening to your podcast, there's so many emotions now with this positive test after trauma of my last 2 miscarriages. And I am hoping that this one will stick and we will have our rainbow baby after all." And I kind of reassured her, talked her through it a little bit, and tried to give this woman the best advice that I could. Again, I am not a doctor or specialist, and I'm going through similar situations and thoughts and emotions myself. It was just nice for me to help reassure her. She then answered back and said, "I called my doctor in a panic at 7:30 this morning, barely slept last night, but still managed to sleep somewhat. He told me to come in for blood work, and 4 hours later, he calls me to congratulate me and told me that my baseline HVG number was looking good, as well as my oxygen levels, progesterone, and all my other hormone levels were looking great. Immediately, he told me to start on prenatals and a multivitamin, but I had been on them already. And I go back on Monday to see what other tests I can take. The last 2 times this happened, I miscarried, but I will say my baseline levels were not looking good at all to begin with." This woman basically is saying that she is hopeful that this baby sticks around, given the fact that her hormone levels sound like they're more leveled out, and she had her fibroid surgeries. So we are sending her the good vibes. We are hoping that this baby sticks, hoping that this is her rainbow. Maybe she'll have multiple babies in the future, God willing, universe willing. And I do love the fact that she said my podcast is very helpful to her. And I'm grateful that she allowed me to share that brief portion of her journey. And again, I decided to keep it anonymous because she actually told me that other than herself and her husband, I am the only other person that she shared that information with. So So I feel very special and honored that I am a complete stranger that she is sharing this information with. And not only that, she is allowing me to anonymously share this with you all. So I hope that that gives you some encouragement. Tiffany, what are your thoughts behind her journey and her story?
I think she's super brave and strong to share her story with you. And I'm so glad that she did, because you even sharing her story is going to help so many people. And congratulations to her. I just hope everything works out for her. And I just wish I could give her a big hug, because you know what? It takes a lot to share your story out there, especially to a stranger, and even allow you to share it publicly is just truly amazing. And she's going to change a lot of people. So it's amazing.
It is very special to share that story with all of us, even if it was anonymous, because I know many people tuning in are going to relate to it, including Tiffany and I, right? We are here in the 5-month mark, and it doesn't matter if you're ready to conceive at the 3-month mark, the 5-month mark, or 2 years from now. You guys, or you women, or you as a couple and a team, you are ready when you are ready, if you are ever ready to decide to conceive again. And I know Tiffany and I just about every day talk to each other. When are we ready to conceive? Are we starting to try to conceive? What are the thoughts and emotions behind all of that? Tiffany, what are your current thoughts on wanting to conceive after loss? I know both of us obviously want a family. We want multiple children. Walk us through the day to day.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, I want living children, but like you said, it comes with so much. Like, it's not that easy. My menstrual cycle has been like fairly normal, but a little bit wacky, a little bit off. And I do think that has a lot to do with stress and grief. And we have a lot going on the farm here. So I definitely feel like my body's still a little stressed out from everything that has happened. So I'm not sure like when we will be ready. And, you know, I'm sure that when it happens, it'll be like the perfect time. And I really just hope that it does work out at some point in our lives. But like you said, you know, trying to conceive after loss, there's a lot of overwhelming emotions. You know, there's excitement if you get a positive pregnancy test, but then there's also worry and try not to get your hopes up because you just never know. And so for me, like there's no safe zone. I will never feel I'm content with, you know, how far along I am in my next pregnancy, which I think is something that is going to be really hard for me, because I will forever be scared up until the baby is alive and in my arms, especially because, you know, I was in labor when we lost Bella. So it'll be really, really hard. But I think that when I'm ready, it'll work out, hopefully. And
I do want to talk a little bit about intimacy after loss. And of course, you and I don't have to get too personal about this topic, because being intimate with our partners is obviously something that we want to keep behind closed doors, no pun intended. But I know Tiffany and I do talk very openly about this amongst one another. And again, we will give you the PG version of it right here on this very podcast. But intimacy and even sex in general after a loss is a hard topic to talk about. What once used to be very fun and enjoyable, and your libido was really high, and you're loving up on your husband because everything is great and dandy and life is good. Now all of a sudden you're thrown into this whirlwind of, you're already under stress. You just went through all this trauma. Your body is still healing. Your libido is not where it is or where it should be, or maybe not even existent yet.